welcome to Whispers on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog. I'm Jordan Klein. Oh, I hear some music hitting in the background, too.
Yeah.
And we got some Lola Miller here with us behind the booth. It is 8:10. It's about 79 degrees here in downtown Wheeling. You all right, Nick?
Yeah, my headphones were messed up. I didn't know what was happening. I was scared.
Okay. Give us a call, 304-214-1600. Toll free, 866-514-1600.
You know what? I just want to real quick. We were talking about Bigfoot last week. I'm mad. Yes. Yeah. You wanted to say something?
That I expected it. I totally expected it. And I think I called it. It was a monkey suit. I called
With
it
possum blood. Yeah.
Bigfoot's now 10% possum.
Murderers.
Well, maybe that's the critter he was talking about.
Well, I'm just mad. I'm mad because we do this show. We come on here. And I take it seriously. I mean, I know some people joke about it and stuff, but you know what? It's a curiosity. It's questioning things that are out there that happen, and then you get some jokers from Georgia that want to make a quick buck. I actually went to the website with the guys, and they were charging people $400, or $400 to $4,000 to go out and look for Bigfoot. And they're not going to find anything. I have no idea what it's. And it's all it was one of them was a cop. I mean, and it just makes me really mad that we have a cop going out there, pretty much making everybody look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And he's not serving the public. He's not protecting the public. He's
taking advantage.
Extorting.
He's scamming,
Yeah.
and we have Frank Feschino coming on today. He actually goes out and does 17 years of research, and it tries to make us all look bad, because then you hear that and you just start associating with people, and it just makes me mad.
Well, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But
even Don Keating, Don Keating, it's going to make him look bad. It's going to make everybody look bad. Everybody gets a black eye, and these guys get a pass.
Yeah, but Don
these
last
guys
week,
get money.
Yeah, Don last week even said, it's most likely fake. It's going to take a lot to prove him. So he was really skeptical too.
Well, I realize that, but no matter we were skeptical, he was skeptical. You know what? It doesn't matter. People are going to still say, "Oh, well, that's."
Yeah, there's still somebody out there saying, "Oh, those Bigfoot hunters are at it again."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know.
That's the same thing with UFOs, ghosts, and mermaids, everything. Mermaids. Yeah.
Been watching Little Mermaid too often.
Someone asked me earlier if I believed in mermaids.
And even mermaids.
But no, seriously though, I mean it's and that's how it happens. People start associating stuff. Oh, you believe in fairies now, and you guys can't be taken seriously. And
I do believe in fairies.
I do believe in fairies. I do believe in fairies.
You guys have been watching way too many.
Well, shall we get Frank on?
Yeah, let's get Frank on if he hasn't already ran away. He's probably scared of us already. And just to give a quick introduction is the author of Shoot 'em Down, The Flying Saucer Air Wars of 1952. Like I said, 17 years of research in this. He's tracked this thing down one end of the coast to the other, all through West Virginia, Ohio. That takes some guts.
Yes, it does.
And it's not he's not from West Virginia. He's from Florida, so he actually went out totally out of his way to really track down what's going on.
So, Frank, you with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Frank. How you doing?
Hey, gang.
How's the tropical storm, hurricane, whatever it's called right
we're
now?
starting to get some of the backlash of the winds right now, so it's picking up a bit.
Well, hopefully we won't lose you during all this. If so, we won't act like you got mad at us or anything.
All right.
Frank, you Shoot Them Down, the Flying Saucer Air Wars of 1952. What is that? What does that title mean?
Well, first of all, let me jump into how I got started in this UFO business. I have relatives in Braxton County, and back in 1991, I came across some crop circles in Braxton County. They were on my cousin's property, and I worked with Colin Andrews, the UFO and crop circle enthusiast from England. And I photographed, took soil samples, and I met Colin when I lived back in Connecticut outside of Yale University in New Haven, and we met. And I was, as far as I know, I was the first person to document crop circle rings in West Virginia. And while I was in Braxton County, I found out about this UFO case called the Flatwoods Monster. And I went into Flatwoods, which is the geographical center of the state, by the way. Okay. And I was greeted by this big giant sign that says, "Welcome to Flatwoods, home of the Green Monster." So I started talking to some of the people in the area, and to make a long story short, I was really amazed about what was going on there in Flatwoods. The people were very standoffish towards me, scared, some people were, and that kind of intrigued me more than the story itself, because it was like a town that had a little secret. So I started investigating this case, looking through journals, newspapers, and I eventually started working with Kathleen May, who was the primary witness involved in this incident. And here I am about 17 years later, still working on this story, and I just finished up my recent book, The Flatwoods Monster, From Myth to Reality. And when I started researching this incident, the title of the book is Shoot Them Down, The Flying Saucer Air Wars in 1952. That spawned off of my Flatwoods research, because I found out that 1952 was a record year for UFO reports that were sent to Project Blue Book. And what Blue Book is, it was an intelligence agency within Wright-Patterson Air Force Base up in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah. And
they were actually in charge of the investigations and evaluation of UFO reports. And Blue Book was pretty new at that time, and Captain Edward Ruppelt was the head of Blue Book. And I researched a lot about Edward Ruppelt, and he wrote a book back in the 50s. Excuse me. And Ruppelt talked about a lot of different things that went on during that year, and I found out there was actually 1,501 reports that went to Blue Book.
Oh, wow.
But what was more amazing is 303 of them were recorded as unknowns.
Now, what does that mean?
There was nothing that could be explained, conventional aircraft. It wasn't a weather balloon. It wasn't Venus. It was something that these intelligence officers deemed an actual unknown.
So that would be like the true UFO.
Right, exactly. Okay. So there were 303 out of 1,501. So I started looking and concentrating into the summer of 1952, because out of those 1,501 reports, June, July, August, and September actually had 1,134 reports just in those 4 months. And June had 148 reports, and that was what Ruppelt said was about the actual date of this UFO flap, when they started escalating from that point. And into July, the famous Washington, D.C. July sightings, where interceptors were sent out over the Washington and Virginia area, and they were given orders to shoot the flying saucers down. And I found out through, it was only a couple international news service wire reports about this story. It wasn't picked widely up around the United States. And I'm going to give you a quote here, guys.
Okay.
There was Lieutenant Colonel Monsell Montz. He was the information officer for the United States Air Force, and his quote was, "The jet pilots are and have been under orders to investigate unidentified objects and to shoot them down if they can't talk them down."
Oh, so
this is in the history books, and everybody overlooked this point of what was going back down in this area. And from July, the 536 reports, in August it was 326. It dropped down a little bit. Then in September, it lowered to 124. So now we have 1,134 reports during those 4 months, which was the highest amount of reports of any period.
Now, what was it with the seasons? Those months, why were they so important? Why did they want to come during those months?
Who's they?
Whoever's driving the UFOs.
Good question. But what happened is during that time, that's where the Flatwoods Monster incident fell into this 4-month period. And that's how I began researching into this shoot 'em down orders and what happened. And I went a little bit further into my research, And the book, Shoot 'em Down, is actually the historical account of the UFO events that occurred that summer. And it focuses on the Air Force and Project Blue Book and all the jet and UFO encounters that occurred during that time. And what I did is I started working with Stanton Friedman, and Stanton was getting me from Norton Air Force Base, was in charge of the accident reports. And they were just recently, within about 2.5 years, they were declassified. So Stanton got his hands on these reports, and I went through them, and there was an extraordinary amount of fighter pilots that were killed in accidents during this era in '52 with the shoot-down orders.
Oh, wow.
So it would have taken 10 lifetimes to go through all of these reports. So what I did is I did a little independent case study, and I went through the New York Times, and I started from about 1951 through 56, and I combed through all of the articles that had to do with these fighter interceptors. And I found 204 accidents with fighter aircraft between 51 and 56 that were destroyed. Now, out of those 204 cases, what is unbelievable is 192 fighters were destroyed over the United States of America.
Wow.
Okay, and out of these 204 incidents, there was actually 199 fighter pilots and radar operators, the co-pilots in the back, that were killed. And that's a pretty sad story. And these occurred during the shoot-down era. And to add into it, there was 20 fighter combat veterans who died during this period. These are guys who fought in World War II and Korea.
And it's all over this 4-month span, right?
No, this is between 1951 and 56.
Oh, okay.
The shoot-down orders were going on during this era. And I did breakdowns, which I have chapters in the book, where I segregate and break all of these different things down.
Oh, your book is very detailed, and it's everything's broken down into area and different stories for each pilot. It's very, very impressive.
Oh, thank you. And so out of these accidents here, guys, there was 204 incidents that the New York Times reported. Okay, now these accidents do not include mid-air collisions between fighters and non-fighter aircraft, because there was a lot of accidents, where a jet interceptor would collide with a cargo plane or something. I didn't include those. Or I didn't include the accidents where if a plane took off and crashed, or if it landed and the landing gear went down. These are fighter aircraft that were destroyed, period. And out of these 204 incidents, I found there were 26 fighter jets that vanished into thin air around the world, and 19 of them vanished over the United States.
Wow.
And no explanations given?
No explanation whatsoever. These guys just took off and vanished into thin air. Now, working with Stanton Friedman, a point that we discuss often is some of these accidents that occurred, you're talking about high-tech modern jets. These weren't prop planes. And some of these jets were crashing into cities and towns and leaving like 10-foot trenches, killing entire families. The shrapnel was exploding for city blocks. So when these jets went down, where they landed.
Yeah, it's
okay, that's the point. Where did all of these jets go during this point? And another point that was kind of mysterious here is that there were actually 62 of the pilots never bailed out over the United States when they were crashing, during their descents. They never bothered to bail out, and that's a real mysterious part of this whole story.
And they're trained to do that.
Exactly.
And we're over land, and it's
62 out of 204 incidents.
Yeah. So what the assumption then is that they were dead before this plane ever crashed.
I'm glad you said that and not me.
Okay. What was the official story given to the families?
These reports that I work with from the Norton Air Force Base reports, a lot of them gave these far-fetched, ridiculous, crying shame explanations.
Swamp
I mean,
gas.
some of them were so ridiculous it looks like kindergartners tried to cover them up. They were that bad. And I cross-referenced a lot of them. I did researches with newspapers and cross-referenced a lot of them. But what happened over the years, I noticed from the 51 and 52 era, the New York Times would put these full-blown articles and photographs on the front page. And as the months and years went by, these gigantic stories ended up being stuck in the back of the paper with like Macy's and Gimbel's ads, and they were like little 1 by 2 inch articles. So they weren't put right up in the public's face. And one of the most disturbing parts of this whole thing with these mysterious accidents is there was 12 different cases that I found where there were multiple jet crashes, where several jets all went down at the same time. There was actually 4 cases where 4 jets in formation all crashed together.
Wow.
And 6 cases, 2 jets had went down, and 2 cases, 3 jets, all flying in formation, and none of them had any midair collisions. Just unexplained.
So they all dropped at the same
They
time?
all just dropped out of the sky at the same time. And it's amazing, over the years, nobody picked up on these articles. But once again, you're talking over several years. But when you take them all and you piece them together, and then you realize during this era that with the shoot-down orders that were in place, because the United States back in 52 especially, they were spring-loaded and ready to go after anything in the sky, because during that Cold War era, the Americans had, intelligence had figured out that the Russians had a capability of coming to the United States and dropping atomic bombs all over the country.
Now, this, of course, leads up to what happened in September of 1952.
Right.
Correct, yeah. Now, which ends up, you were talking to me earlier today, and I even told you then, that's just an amazing story, which, if you can explain what happened with the 3 different craft. Actually, first we have a phone call, if you don't mind. Someone has a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, this is Wade, Frank.
Okay.
Hi, Wade.
Hi, Wade.
Hi, I'd like to ask your guest, in his book, if he covered the flights that left Miami on a training mission, and I don't know what year it happened, but the planes were never seen again. I think might have been...
The Avengers?
Yeah.
No,
What year did that happen, and is that in your book? I'll listen offline to your answer. Thank you.
No, it's not.
Thanks, Wade.
That's a whole story within itself. There's been books written about that case just in particular.
Isn't that the connection to the Bermuda Triangle?
Right. That supposedly was solved. Somebody
Wow.
wrote a book about that.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Okay.
So what we have here is during the summer of 52, I discovered that the night that this Flatwoods Monster incident happened, there was a record amount of sightings over the United States. And it was on September 12th, the night of the Flatwoods Monster incident. What was the question you wanted to ask me?
Well, what I'm saying is, when we were talking earlier, you said there was 3 different crafts that entered into our airspace. One of them was heading towards
Wright-Patterson.
Wright-Patterson.
Oak Ridge National Laboratory.
Oak Ridge, yeah,
That's
I was trying to think. Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and then the third one
Was D.C.
was D.C. And that was a really interesting story, and that's something I'd like you to explain if you don't mind.
Yeah, I discovered there was 21 hours of UFO sightings on September 12, 1952 that were written off what intelligence said was a meteor that was seen for about 5 to 6 seconds that flew over Washington.
Now, where did you get this information from?
Project Blue Book.
Okay.
On September 12th, it's kind of funny, when I got the documents, they come on microfilm, and I got them from National Archives in D.C., and when I got the spool, I said, there's a lot of reports on this. Most of the reports will go for like weeks on end. This whole spool was nearly September 12th. That's how many pages.
Jeez.
You know, there was close to about 180 pages of, you know, documents. And that's primarily what I worked off of. Then from there, I went and I followed the paper trails of local newspapers, major newspapers. And what I did is I worked with different people in different fields, Air Force people, fighter pilots, Navy, mechanics, people from that era, and I worked with a lot of Vietnam vets, too, who were familiar, you know, with this type of work to do all military. And I started putting together pieces of this whole night of what happened over this 21-hour period. And I had to get a map. I live near Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University here in Daytona, and I put together flight maps, and I have this. There's pictures of this on my website, and it's the picture on the back to shoot them down. It's about 6 by 8 feet, and it's the whole eastern seaboard of the United States. And what I found out, that there was UFO sightings the night of the Flatwoods Monster incident over 9 East Coast states. They were Delaware, Maryland, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and West Virginia. And Blue Book was the primary source. The answers were right there in the government files. And on that night, there was reportings of UFOs to the Pentagon, Air Force bases, state police, airports, Civil Aeronautics Administration, and I just recently found out the FBI was even contacted.
Wow.
So you have thousands of people over these 9 states are seeing UFOs. Now, back then, the media isn't what it is now. You could jump online now and you could find out what's going on anywhere in the world within minutes. Back then, the primary source of information through the media was newspapers. Not everybody had televisions, and you didn't have the coverage back then that we do now. So by using the Blue Book documents, that's when I spread out into all these different states. I traveled to a lot of these states. I worked with librarians from these different states, and they sent me all of these articles. So now I have this 6 by 8 foot map, and for several years I was pinpointing where all these sightings took place. I have the times they were seen, the locations, their flight path trajectories. So it's kind of like what you see in a lot of these cop shows where they're looking for somebody and they're like a killer, and they section off the quadrants. Well, that's what I did. I sectioned off all these quadrants where all these sightings were. Then I went into local little newspapers, and in West Virginia especially there was weekly papers. So when I caught the hot trail coming out of the Blue Book, then I went into some of the national papers and then the regional papers, and they gave sightings. So what I was doing is connecting the dots for 17 years of what happened. So I have all of these hundreds of dots all over this map, and I just started connecting the dots because I knew this one was seen here at 7 o'clock, this was seen 7:05, 7:10, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then I built together and I reconstructed all the events that happened that night.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of research.
Yeah, and
I hope you were retired when you started this.
Yeah, I started in 1991. Wow. Here I am again.
You said earlier it was your nightmare. So.
Yeah, because I had no idea it was going to take this long to do. And a lot of people, including Stanton Friedman, have kidded me, and they said, you know, the Air Force intelligence people in Blue Book back in that era probably couldn't even figure out what was going on.
And you've done it.
Not this detailed, but I pulled it together.
Now, you say you have a picture of that on your website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that map's on the website, and it's a picture. When I was talking to Nick earlier, he was looking at it in the back of the book. So now I have this big, gigantic map, and I work with a lot of police people. Police are basically trained in military strategy. So working with retired sheriffs and deputies and different military personnel, they all helped me figure this out. I was not trained. I've never been in the military. So I had to learn a lot over 17 years. And everybody I worked with gave me a little different piece of information. and I had one fella in particular help me piece the major reconstruction of this map. And what Nick was talking about earlier is at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on September 12th, 3 damaged UFOs flew over the eastern seaboard. And what they did is they spread into a fan pattern. One went down towards Oak Ridge National Laboratory, who had worked on developing the atomic bomb. That's very, military-sensitive area, and it flew approximately 100 miles through the no-fly zone. Try doing that today.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Now, is the record of, that going through the no-fly zone and, government trying to do
Project Blue Book.
Yeah, all of this stuff was in Blue Book. And like I said earlier, what I did is when I picked up the trail off of Blue Book, then I contacted the libraries, and I went to some of them in Tennessee, and I pulled all these old stories off the microfilm. And then, because Blue Book didn't give every little detail, because they were reporting on what was given to them.
Yeah.
Because there was tens of thousands of people across the country that saw these UFOs, but not all of them sent their reports to Blue Book.
Not all of them probably had even heard of Blue Book.
Right. How many people even knew the protocol, and how do you contact the Air Force, and who do you send this to, and they send you this report back, and you have to fill it out. It wasn't easy to do, especially in 52.
Yeah.
Like I said, with the media, not too many people knew you can even do this. So anyways, then when I would go into the local areas, and that's where I pinpointed and found out what was going on. So we have one UFO flew down there. The other UFO that came in a few minutes later flew over Baltimore, Maryland, and it was actually flying at treetop level, going through some neighborhoods, which is pretty scary.
Oh,
Once again, I found some information in Blue Book. Then I got hold of all the Baltimore libraries. They sent me, the librarians sent me all the articles, and I started picking the trail up. And this UFO flew across Baltimore, and it went up near the panhandle of West Virginia, shot underneath it, and it went towards Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
No, that's actually where we're at right now, is the northern panhandle.
Yeah.
Right, it went right under you guys, and it was on a beeline, and it was actually following the flight path and the beacon signals of all these airports and strategic areas. It's amazing. When I started pinpointing this stuff, they were following the flight path lines, and it flew close to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The other one is going down towards Oak Ridge, making a beeline towards it, and it's there. It's like a V pattern.
Now, what would be the purpose of it going to Wright-Patterson? Why would it fly there?
Okay, well, what happened is a few minutes later, another one comes right down the middle. And you could see this on my website. The third one came down and made a beeline and actually passed over Washington, D.C. So you have 3 damaged objects. One of them goes to one strategic area, and it's putting the heat on. These things, you have to think of them and think of this like a military strategy. They're just not UFOs randomly flying around. The second one's going towards another strategic area, and it's putting the heat on. Here comes a third one, which was actually the Flatwoods Monster ship. I tracked it over the seaboard.
Wow.
It flew over Washington, D.C., and the New York Times had it, and the following day, a big article. They called it the Flame over Washington. It flew over Washington on a western trajectory, and Flatwoods is 206 miles away from Washington. When it came over Washington and flew through the no-fly zone, which you're not supposed to do either. You're not supposed to fly through that area. It was coming in and over that D.C. area, treetop levels, flying under radar. It's all documented in the newspapers, and it's documented in Blue Book. They called it a meteor, which was seen for 5 to 6 seconds. It actually took about 25 minutes to fly from Washington to Flatwoods. Along the way, there were pieces of it falling off. It was damaged.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so now when it flew through the Washington area, there's Air Force bases and naval bases, air station bases throughout the Washington area. They're on 24-hour alert. Okay? Anything that flies near the Capitol, what do? You send interceptors at it. Because during this era, once again, I told you, they were anticipating the Russians to come in.
The Cold War.
Okay, now you have this scary Cold War thing going on, and here comes this UFO flying over Washington. When it was not intercepted over Washington and passed west and cleared without getting hit again, because that's the whole point of this. These things, I believe, were shot off the eastern seaboard. When it passed Washington and was clear and a safe distance away, the other two that were flying at Wright-Patterson and Oak Ridge, they turned back away in the opposite direction.
So essentially, they had threatened those two spots.
Exactly.
And when when it flew over Washington, we didn't respond. They backed off.
They backed off.
Right,
So
well,
you have purpose. You have, you have direction and purpose and will with the crafts, which is just something you don't get with meteors.
Right. Now here is the scary part of what happened when this flame over Washington passed over the Capitol. It's all documented in Blue Book. There are dozens of pages of this. There were 12 UFOs that descended over Washington, Virginia, and Maryland. They dropped out of the sky from the atmosphere above, and they surrounded that damaged craft, and they followed it west.
Kind of like a halo kind of thing.
Bingo, just like a football game. A runner running, they had their blockers and they had their protectors. This is in Blue Book.
Is there anything in Blue Book or anything out of the military at all that would point to who actually damaged these craft? Was it a ship offshore that perhaps saw it and took pot shots at it, or fighters or something?
Well, back in that era, like I said earlier, there was the orders to shoot them down.
Yeah.
If you can't talk them down, and here come, these orders were standing for a while. It was just admitted during that era. And there was also another statement that was made. Are any of you guys familiar with Major General Roger Ramey, who was tied into the Roswell incident?
I've heard of him.
Okay.
Read it in books and stuff.
He was the Deputy Chief of the Air Force Staff of Operations. And here's a quote I found out of the Louisville Courier-Journal. This was Wednesday, July 30th. Here's what he said. Interceptor planes have raced aloft several hundred times as a result of reported sightings of unidentified objects. Ramey said that was just standard procedure. This was said at the press conference at the Pentagon on Tuesday, July 29th, 52.
Wow.
So they're running around shooting at things all over the place. If you couldn't talk them down, shoot them down. Now, during that era, what is interesting, which a lot of people didn't realize, well, how can we shoot them down with bullets? Not only did the Air Force and Navy have bullets and cannons, back in 52, there was actually 3 fighter jets that were carrying rockets on board. You had the Navy's F-7U-3 Cutlass. The Air Force had the F-86D Sabre jet, which was the Sabre Dog, and then what was unveiled in the early July of 52 was the F-94C Starfire.
Yeah, that's on the back of your book. There's a picture of that one.
Right. Now, these fighter jets, they all had air-to-air rockets, and they were nicknamed Mighty Mouse rockets after the comic book character, Mighty Mouse. And they were actually folding fin aerial rockets. They were stabilized by these fins, and they were inside of the aircraft. There was the different models. They were all situated in different areas, how they were launched. But they were 2.75 inch rockets, and they had a 7.5-pound warhead. They were like about 4 feet long, and they actually had an effective range of 3,700 yards, and they traveled at 2,500 feet per second.
Wow.
That's what we were using back then to chase them.
Probably the only thing that could touch them.
Right. Now, you have all of this stuff going on, interceptors, shoot them down if you can't talk them down. All of this is going on during this era, all documented. Then on September 12, 52, you have these damaged UFOs coming over the eastern seaboard. I intersected all 3 of the lines, and they pinpointed and intersected 90 miles off the coast of the United States. That's where something happened, was off the coast there.
So that's when they split up and decided to take action.
Exactly. You have, if you look, it's a three-way split the way they came in. Now, what happened in Flatwoods, this object went 206 miles across on a western trajectory. It picked up the flight path going into Braxton County. It flew over Elkins, and you could actually, I have the aeronautical maps, you could see where they were flying from point to point to point. And one of the objects up where you guys are almost collided with a passenger plane at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. It's all documented in the Intelligencer, a lot of Ohio papers, a Pittsburgh paper. And what happened is when this third object flew in towards Braxton County, it hit northern Braxton County. It actually followed the main artery road that comes down into Flatwoods that cuts between the mountains.
Oh, wow.
It was ingenious. It didn't fly over the mountains, and what Stanton always says, if you're a fighter pilot and your aircraft is damaged, you're having trouble with it, you don't want to be flying up and trying to avoid mountains. What do? You go to the farthest point, and then you come down the valley. And that's what fighter pilots and aircraft pilots would do during the war. You follow the railroad tracks, or you follow the river, or you follow the road. You're not going to hit anything.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, especially in West Virginia with all the mountains. This thing hit northern Braxton County around where Burnsville is, and it headed south. Now, that's a neat trick for a meteor. Make a 45-degree angle.
All of this is just amazing tricks for meteors.
Yeah. You just have to remember that. And now it's heading down towards Flatwoods. When it got over Route 19 in Flatwoods, it flew over to Flatwoods Elementary School. And it made another 45-degree angle turn, and it headed back east again, crossed over 19, and landed up on the back of the Bailey Fisher farm. That's where the beginning of the Flatwoods Monster story actually begins. What I did is I worked in reverse. I investigated the Flatwoods case, and I wanted to find out where did it come from, because every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I started with Flatwoods and worked in reverse, and I was able to track it back to Washington.
Now, when I was doing, we got this book from the library. Jordan actually opens it up and finds something. I actually live, like, it's in my backyard, Oglebay Park.
Right.
And so when I saw that, I'm thinking, wow, I can actually go out my back door and I look at it. It's right there. And which was an interesting, when we found out about the Bashful Billy, what they named it. And can you tell us about that a little bit?
There were, on September 12th, there were those three crafts that came in, that were damaged. And the first one, there was no sighting of an entity that crashed right before it went to Oak Ridge. The second one flew up towards Wright-Patterson. It turned back and it followed the beacon up to the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport just outside of the flight path. And then it turned and it landed in Oglebay Park, which is just northwest of the Wheeling area.
Yeah, that's
And it's documented in the papers. A couple driving their car saw this thing come down, and then I pinpointed its flight path. It was seen throughout the Wheeling area. It was seen over Wheeling, McMecken, and then it actually picked up the flight path coming down to Parkersburg, and it followed the beacon there over the Wood County Airport. Then it flew down into the Charleston area and landed in St. Albans.
And why would it land in Oglebay?
Okay. Once again, I worked in reverse from Oglebay Park. Then I have that pinpointed on my map. Then I started looking into this story that appeared in the Wheeling Intelligencer. Monster from outer space arrives here via saucer.
Can I interrupt you just a second?
Sure.
Nick and I actually went to the Ohio County Library just to check out and verify that this is really what's going on, just in case, you were making up a story or something like that. Not trying to discredit you, but,
right.
We just wanted to know, is that real? Was it really in the paper? And so we went down to the library. They got the newspapers all, the
microfilm.
Yeah, the microfilm. And sure enough, September, like the whole week, we looked through the whole week, and I swear we printed off 10 to 13 articles just about the monster from outer space arrives here via saucer. I have it printed out right here on the desk in front of me. All over the place, UFOs, fire in the sky, the lights flashing over Oglebay.
And actually the picture of Bashful Billy, which was printed in there in the paper, which I'm wanting, which looking at your book and looking at it, you can see the connections of where, the reptilian kind of looks for it.
Exactly. And it was mocked at, and they made fun of it in the Wheeling area.
Yeah,
it was an actually, they're telling you that police found a badly burned, decomposed body of a woman in Vineyard Hills. And then you start having stories coming out about people seeing monsters and scaring the daylights out of people, and a lot of crazy things going on.
They were trying to explain away the smell.
The smell, and then there's another paper that the police poo-poo monster reports. They made a big joke out of it, and I pieced all of this whole thing together, and where this happened is just a short distance away from the Oglebay Park, where that thing landed, the damaged one.
That's Vineyard Hill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right up. We actually drove over there the other day, which is one of the higher points in the area.
Just a couple miles away from the studio here.
Yeah.
Right, so now you have a down-to-aircraft up there in that area. You have these monster reports where they mocked them and made fools out of the people in the Wheeling area. Then in the center of the state, you have the Flatwoods Monster. So now you have another entity there, and that was seen by Kathleen May and the group of kids. So you have the Wheeling area, you have that. Then the following night, there was another encounter with George and Edith Natowski in Frametown, which was 17 miles away from Flatwoods, and their car stalled down, and this thing came out. It was along the side of the woods near the road, and it came out, and it circled their car. And the comparisons between all three of these stories are amazing. The Flatwoods Monster wasn't a monster, per se. That was a nickname given to it. Yeah. And it didn't have claws. It didn't have a flowing cloak dress. And what it was a metallic structure. An artist the following week had drawn this picture on national television, and Mrs. May and one of the witnesses and a newspaper reporter were on, and it looked nothing like what it was. I'm an illustrator, and I worked with these witnesses, and they actually showed me what it looked like. And there's pictures on my website.
Yeah, and I put a few of those up. I was telling you I was going to put a few of those up, and they're actually on our website where we link to yours.
Cool.
On whispersradio.com.
Right.
And yours is Flatwoods Radio, or Flatwoods Radio.
Flatwoodsmonster.com.
Wow, I'm sorry, Flatwoodsmonster.com.
We even have the articles copied onto the computer from the newspaper. If you want to look at that, that's on our website as well, Whispers Radio.
And we're always looking for more information there, guys. You might
never
have
know
somebody
listening
to the show tonight up in the Wheeling area who was involved with this story, because it was a massive cover-up story in Wheeling. That could be another book in itself. I spent so many years in Flatwoods. This is a whole other story in itself.
It's taken 17 years just to crack the Flatwoods.
Right.
And I know the newspapers here. I believe in the cover-up.
So, actually, I'm coming up, and I hope to see everybody there. I'm going to be in St. Albans, West Virginia, and Brothers Bailey Promotions is putting together the Flatwoods Monster and Flying Saucer Extravaganza, and it's going to be on September 12th and 13th. September 12th is the actual day of the incident, and it was a Friday night this year. It happens to fall on a Friday night. And we're going to have one of the actual eyewitnesses, who was a boy then, Freddie May. He was on the school ground when the UFO went over and landed on the hilltop, and when the whole group went up there and encountered the Flatwoods Monster on the Bailey Fisher farm. He's going to be there.
So he saw the thing and came in contact.
Right. He was one of the group that went up and actually saw this thing and encountered it on the farm. And he's going to be there. He's going to be talking to people, and he's going to be signing autographs and taking pictures. He's a really great guy, and the whole May family and all the witnesses I worked with were great, and they're happy that this story is finally coming out and being told the correct way. And at this Flying Saucer Extravaganza, we're going to have Jeff Lomsley. He's a Mothman author and expert.
Yeah, he was here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, the theme of the show is going to be the Flatwoods Monster meets Mothman. They're the two biggest monsters up there, so we're going to have that special show. And, of course, we're going to have Stanton Friedman. Stanton's flying in from Canada.
All right, for those of you that don't know, Stanton is a nuclear physicist. He's also considered the father of modern ufology.
Roswell, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've worked for Stanton for several years, and Stanton and I will be talking to everybody there. And probably the main person I want to thank is Mayor Dick Calloway, and he's the St. Albans mayor, and he was helping us with this whole thing.
That's good.
And he's hosting this whole extravaganza. It's going to be at the Alban Art and Conference Center. So it's going to be an extravaganza, guys. We're doing reenactments on stage. We're going to be having live music. We're going to be having lectures. So there's going to be,
we could have a closed cage match between Mothman and the other monster. That might really work well.
We would know who would win that one.
Well, Frank, how do people get a copy of your book?
You can go on my website, www.flatwoodsmonster.com, and you could purchase it through the website. I'm going to have several cases up there at St. Albans, and they're up there already, and I'm actually going to have a lot of my research up there. I have display boards. I'm going to have.
Will you have your map pinpointed out? Will that
yes,
be up there?
Yeah, that's stood with a guard around there.
And everybody's invited to that, right? Everyone can come, young and old, party for all.
Extravaganza.
Yeah, it's going to be a big event. We're going to have some vintage cars from that era out front, and Mr. Bailey is putting all that together, the promoter, and the contact information's on my website.
And I also have the book linked up to on our website where you can purchase it as well. So
very good, thank you.
So that's yours is flatwoodsmonster.com.
Right.
And if they need to get in contact with you, if they have information on the Bashful Billy or any of this,
right,
they can find your contact information there, correct?
Right, absolutely. Okay. And Stanton Friedman has a gigantic website, too, and Stanton Friedman is always open for calls, too. You could contact him through StantonFriedman.com.
And we'll have him next week.
Yeah, he's actually going to be our guest next week.
We're really looking forward to him, too.
So if you want to hear this show, Frank, WKKX.com, because we're on the web, too.
Okay, very good. How much time we got left?
We're about done.
Okay. If you want to call in next week and ask Stan a question or bring in some comments, we'd be more than happy to have you.
Yeah, I can lock y'all in.
Very good.
Okay.
Hey, Frank, thanks a lot for for letting us call you.
Very good.
And chat with us, and good luck in the storm, sir.
Hope to see you at the show, guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
All righty.
No, I see. I think that's interesting. He has a lot of research with everything.
I would like to read the book.
The book's amazing. And like I was telling him, I was like, I haven't finished it yet because I keep going back. I mean, because it's hard to really picture all this happening at the same time. Like you said, these UFOs coming in and threatening these places, and then drawing back and all this stuff. And when I saw the Oglebay Park thing, I'm right behind, it's right behind my house. And what he said about the flight pass. And, he's coming from the Wheeling Airport going down, and I see the planes going over all the time. And I can see that flight path, and I can see it all happening. So.
Now, see, I was totally skeptical. I try to look at everything first skeptically.
We know you are. I'm just kidding.
And I don't know, when we went to the library and checked it out, and I saw all these articles, oh, man.
It brings it alive, it really does. And
well, see, with Blue Book, too. That got classified, and then all of a sudden the Air Force started saying nothing like that ever existed. And the minute the government starts to cover stuff up, that's when I get very, very curious. Yes, because let's face it, anytime, But think of this though: if they had gone public and said, absolutely, there are things flying around, and we don't know what they are. Those movies really are not probably out of the realm of possibility. Can you see the mass panic?
And this is going to be something, Stan Friedman talks about this. He calls it all a cosmic Watergate kind of thing, where, they're trying to cover this stuff up and everything. And he mentions this in in his book and stuff about how, what would happen and stuff like that. And it's going to be interesting next week to talk to him because he's got his hands in all of this stuff almost. He's kind of the, I don't want to say the godfather, but that's kind of, he knows he has this interest and he's been researching it for years, a lot longer than Frank has. And
well, he's 73 now, and I believe he was the first civilian investigator of Roswell. So I mean, he's been doing it most of his life. Yeah.
Well, think about this, and George will ask this. George Kellis is very skeptical of any of this stuff, but he always says, "Why would anything that had that kind of intelligence and ability that could actually do interplanetary travel? Why would they come here? And then when they come, we shoot at them."
Well,
I mean, think about it. If you walk up to the house and somebody pulls a gun on you, are you going to stand there and say, "Hi, I want to come in"?
Well, think of it this way. I mean, look at in schools we have chemistry and stuff. We dissect frogs. Mm-hmm. We are the lesser life form, I guess, to them. So they catch us and they
anal
check
probe
us out. They probe around.
I know.
I think in some ways, I mean, I know there's conspiracy theories out there that say we've been in collusion with them. There's a book called The Day After Roswell by a man named Philip J. Corso. He was a colonel in the Army, and his book details how he was part of a government project that took the stuff from Roswell, and he wasn't there at the crash or anything, but he got the stuff from Wright-Patterson. And his job in the Army intelligence was to take it out, figure out what it was, and send it out to people to reverse engineer it for our uses. And he details in his book how all of a sudden you have Roswell, which we can talk to Stan about this next week and see what he thinks. Roswell, and then all of a sudden you start having all of this stuff come out, microprocessors, microwaves, all this stuff that comes out afterwards where it's been reverse engineered back. And what if we somehow became associated with these entities to some degree and benefiting from this, back and forth? The government's like, okay, look, I know you're researching, you're, looking at, we'll turn a blind eye to you taking some.
Oh, I'm sure they don't turn a blind eye. They just keep a closed mouth.
In other words, kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, not as good as wink to a blind eye. Exactly. You take what you need. We just want some stuff back.
Yeah.
And all of a
military
sudden,
uses.
And if you think about how quickly we went from 1947 before that to, what we have
technologically.
Now. You're talking about an amazing leap.
Yeah.
And that's
really.
what a lot of these people say that's happened. That's why, they're keeping a kind of a low profile because they already have agreements.
Have you been out to Roswell?
I've never had.
Or not Roswell. Well, Area 51. Yeah.
That's a Groom Lake, all that area. I had never been out there.
You cannot get.
Oh yeah. Well, I know.
I've driven out by there. You cannot.
Really?
You cannot get.
Yeah, they won't let you go. And I've heard of people saying that they'll go and they'll cross a certain point, and all of a sudden.
Here comes a Jeep.
Here comes a Jeep.
I didn't try that.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I would have.
You should have.
I know. I had my mom with me. What am I going to do? Get my mom arrested by the FBI or something?
Just tell her, hey, you wait here. I'll be over here, and if you don't see me,
hitchhike back to Vegas.
I'll tell you what. We talked with a guy a couple weeks ago who lived out in Nevada and said that he would. What was it? He had like a metal detector and would go out through the desert. The desert with the metal detector trying to find stuff and would sell it. Well, he'd always see, the Area 51 thing, and he said you could always see like a truck with people with guns and stuff, up on like a hill. And he said that there was time because he'd go there like every day that you could see them building a
runway.
Yeah, they were building a runway long enough for a plane to take off, and then by the time they finished, he said they covered it all up with sand.
Well, what they claim that's where they test. The phantoms and all that kind of stuff.
Which it could, could very well be. It's
nice and flat out there.
Oh yeah, sure, if it's UFOs or if they're testing stuff, of course you're going to see strange things in the sky, and I would say that's probably a cover up for a more important secret base that nobody knows about. We're all watching this one, yeah.
Well, there's a book called Genesis, which goes into all of the the technology that's come out. According to this author, and he had a lot of stuff to back it up, a lot of this stuff was developed by the Nazis.
Really?
And that Hitler had, well, we know he had bases built into mountains.
I think the
carved
father
into
of
mountains.
of NASA and our space exploration was a Russian, or I'm not a Russian, but a German
scientist.
Rimler, or a Romer. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, but it's intriguing. It is truly intriguing. And then you've got Chariots of the Gods too.
Yeah.
And something, I don't care what anybody says. There isn't a civil. I don't even know that we could do it now to make those patterns and the shapes that are down in South America, primarily on those plateaus. I don't even know that we could do that now without looking
the big
down
white
on
pictures. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's amazing,
So-
and there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, you just don't understand. I mean,
You're a believer in UFOs, right?
you said you've seen one.
Yeah. And I was not high. I don't care what you say.
I never said. Well, Jordan, were you going to say anything?
No, but there's people out there that actually have said that. You were just blasted, that's all.
Just float away, Moon Woman.
All right, updates on our site. We are recording shows. We are putting them up, podcasting them. You can listen to the show anytime throughout the week or whenever. The night after it airs. Or the night it airs.
Listen to it over and over and dream about us, whatever.
You can subscribe to it on iTunes.
I have a link up to the iTunes now.
Okay. We have links to all of our guests at whispersradio.com.
Bashful Billy's on there.
The wonderful picture. And it would make a great tattoo.
Jordan wants to get a tattoo.
I want to get a tattoo of it just for the heck of it.
In 10 years from now, you'll hate yourself. Trust me on this
10
one.
years from now.
So if anybody else gets a Bashful Billy tattoo, please email it to us so we can put it on the site.
We'll even lie and say it's Jordan.
Whispers1600 at gmail.com. Make sure you get up with us there. Next week, we got Stan Friedman.
Wow.
Friedman. Like we've been talking about. He is the know-all, the go-all. He's the man when it comes to UFOs. It should be a really exciting show. He's a man full of knowledge.
Yeah, I'm really interested in what he's got to say.
We have listeners from all over the place now, and I'd like to say a special hello to Mike and Nora in Cincinnati.
Hello, Mike and Nora. I was not high.
All right. Until next time, don't be afraid, only believe.